Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Scott.
I'm Shatay, and we're the Hazes.
Welcome to the Love Haze podcast, where we believe that healing and wholeness are not just destinations.
That's right. We believe they're a journey. And here on the Love Haze, we talk about how to navigate through it.
Absolutely. It's Juneteenth, y'all.
Turn up.
And we celebrate Blackness every day.
Every day.
But we are particularly excited that in the U.S., we're finally celebrating Juneteenth as a federal holiday.
Yep.
We thought it would only be right that we talk about freedom today.
Yep.
But not politics. We want to talk about spiritual, emotional, financial, all things freedom. And so we really want to talk about what it means to be free. We're going to get into a little bit of all of that today. Y'all know how we do it. That's what we're here for. Welcome back to our Black Love journey. Let's get into it.
Let's go.
Let go.
So it's Juneteenth.
Yes, ma'am.
And I don't know what y'all did in Alabama, but being from Houston, Texas, only minutes away from Galveston, and I want to save y'all from a history lesson on Juneteenth. So if you're unfamiliar, please go and Google that thing. There are tons of videos out there. But, short version is Emancipation Proclamation was signed, 1863-ish, 2.5+ years later. Enslaved Africans in Texas, in Galveston to be exact, heard for the very first time
that they were free.
And it was on June 19th, and June 19th came Juneteenth, and that is what we celebrate when enslaved Africans found out that they were free. And so for a lot of folks, July the 4th, when the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776, they celebrate that as America's independence, but most of us weren't free. And by most of us, I mean the folks that look like
us,
Scotty and I. And so Juneteenth is really important to us because, we built this country and
for free.
Yeah. And weren't really, I guess, technically seen as free. Not even then, not even when that was signed, not even when they learned it. Like then there was the whole 13th Amendment, and then there's just, it's a whole thing. And so we said we weren't gonna be talking about politics. My point was, I grew up in Houston, and so Juneteenth was always around. It was, I don't recall ever not knowing about it, and not because they taught it in schools, but because the Black community in Houston, it was just always a thing. There were parades and I don't know. I don't want to say festivals, but it was just like always a celebratory experience growing up. Is that something y'all had in Alabama?
Definitely not growing up. We did not know a lot about Juneteenth. Knew just a little bit about it that, we learned in some of my, I think, middle school on into high school. But it was definitely just like a blip in the story. Definitely no celebrations that we went to and that type of thing. I didn't really learn about it until I, got into like junior, senior year of high school and start interacting more with going to Tuskegee University during the summers and learning more about it then.
Yeah. I wonder if it's because, in Houston we have Texas Southern University, Prairie View is not far. Basically we have HBC communities. I'm also thinking about Emancipation Park in Houston is said to be, I think I was doing the history on it recently, that could have been a place where folks gathered to celebrate Juneteenth. So that is also a thing. So it's just really rich history there, especially being so close to Galveston. But my point is, it was always a thing.
Right.
So this kind of connection with my culture, with who I am as a person was always a thing. As I've become an adult, though, freedom has really just been about like, who am I as a person? Am I living my freest version? Politics aside, systemic bias aside, like, am I, to the best of my ability, living the freest version of myself? At work, I want to just take a moment to shout out the Black Engagement Network at my company. I'm the chair of that. And we had our Freedom Fest event on a couple of days ago, and it's really an opportunity, and it's rare that you get this in a corporate setting, but in this corporate setting, we're able to have this acknowledgement of Juneteenth, affirm our freedom, celebrate it with spoken word and music, history. We showed a video about the history of Juneteenth to all these folks, mixed company. It wasn't just the Black employees. really have people come up and talk about what freedom means to them. And
Mhm.
someone mentioned that they haven't stepped foot in a grocery store since May 14th and mass shootings. And like, so in that vein of that conversation, this person was talking about this art that they submitted in terms of like, what does freedom mean to them and what does 1865 mean to them? And they used as their inspiration the Nina Simone clip that we were watching recently, with her saying that, like, to her, freedom means no fear. She's like, just really
Mhm.
no fear. And that really sat with me.
Mhm.
And I think that there's a lot of validity to that. If you think about how much fear we have about, are the plans we've made for ourselves going to happen? Are we going to be able to have kids? Are we
Mhm.
enough? Do we have enough money? Are we healthy enough? Are we? Do you know what I mean? There's like
Mhm.
all of these things that our fears kind of creep up and almost dictate how we show up in some instances,
Yeah.
unless we're self-aware enough. But just this idea of like, what, no fear, and what does that even look like? But I thought that was really, really powerful,
Mhm.
and could be, I'm not saying that that is my exactly what freedom means to me, but I think it's a very, I think it's part of it. But would love to hear like what freedom means to you.
I think freedom really encompasses a lot for me, but it's more about like not. I don't want to be in bondage to anything that
Yeah.
relates to my thoughts about like what I want my life to look like. The emotional bondage that can sometimes come along after you've made bad decisions.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just kind of put these restraints on yourself and not let yourself do certain things because you believe that you'll fail again or make the same mistake and those types of things. So um freedom for me is just like giving myself permission to just like live
Mm,
and be on the journey,
yeah.
um and not having to be worried about like, am I doing too much, am I doing too little, and
Yeah.
to your point, are we going to be parents,
Mhm.
when will it happen,
Mhm.
am I doing enough, am I working out enough, am I doing
Mhm.
all these things, and not allowing my own thoughts of not enoughness in all of these different areas of my life to kind of dictate, how I live, and if it's holding me back from just really having a chance to like have gratitude for what it is that we
Yeah.
already have.
Mhm.
And I just don't want any kind of restraint. So I want to be free in all of those areas just to live and grow and be on the
Yeah.
journey and make the mistakes and bob and weave and adjust and all those things as needed. I think that's really what freedom is to me, like giving myself permission to be in the game, to be doing the things that I want to be doing.
Yeah. As you're sitting here talking, I'm thinking what's coming up for me is like, I wish I were free from my stuck places.
Mhm.
I wish I were free from triggers. And I think it, to your point, it does, a lot of it stem around not enoughness, but the things that have happened to us that have forever changed us. And it's difficult to say I wish I was free from my stuck places, because then that, does that mean that I don't want to negate the lessons that I've learned.
Mhm.
They've also helped to make me who I am, and I love who I am. But I just really wish that there were some things where I'm like, gosh, I wish I was over that already, or like, why do I have to keep revisiting that? And so I guess part of my response then is like, I think freedom, for me is like, it just feels like it's going to get into a deep philosophical thing, but like, complete healing from the stuck places. But are we ever really completely done with healing and growing from those places?
I don't think we are, and I think some of the things that I think that we've been watching and we've been reading, and this whole idea, I think that I'm leaning more into, especially, I think in this last quarter in particular, I've been leaning in like to trying to take myself out of stuff,
Mhm.
like the things that we've gone through. Yeah, they may trigger us, but also we've gone through that stuff to like be something for somebody else.
Yeah.
And even thinking about like freedom and what it looks like, and the people who played a big part in like emancipation of Black people. There's a role that we have to play in that, and some of it is like via the mistakes that we've already made. We've had conversations around like being able to talk about the things that we've done
Mhm.
that serve to be a part of like our story, so we can
Yeah.
tell people about what we've been through, so they can be free. And I don't know that I want to be free of my triggers, because if I'm free of my triggers,
Mm.
then how can I tell people about what I've been through? And if I always make everything about me and how I feel, and I don't want to feel that way anymore, then how can I do the work that I'm supposed to be doing?
I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. I just wish I could do both of them. I wish I could help people and
Look,
not.
you know that this is always my answer, right? And this is, I think this is how I try to set myself free. Like both of them, BOFFUM is my word. Both of them. There's both and, right. So there is work that I have to be doing around like being better with dealing with my triggers when they come, but there is also work that I'm supposed to be doing with helping people understand that they're not abnormal when they experience
Yeah.
the fallout of their stuck places, when they have their triggers. There is me here who is actively in therapy, who is also a therapist, who does this work every day, and I still have triggers. So,
Mhm.
no, sir, no, ma'am, you're not abnormal, right? Experience that, but learn how to live and to have joy in the midst of those
Yeah.
things. Don't feel like you got to sat down somewhere and you got to be in this bondage of, putting these restraints on yourself and not experiencing all that life has for you because you've been through this thing or that you made this mistake.
Yeah. I hear you.
There's life and life more abundantly for us to have.
Mhm. I feel you. I feel you. And
Yeah.
I'll keep figuring out how to do that. That's the response I'm thinking most clearly now.
That's what we all have to do.
Yeah.
That's what we all have to do. Um, do you have any models of freedom that you aspire to?
That's an interesting question. I think there are different models. I don't think I've seen one model of freedom, like all parts of freedom. So, like you were saying in the intro, there's financial freedom and mental freedom and spiritual freedom, emotional freedom. I can look on TV and like watch reality shows. So, that's what's that? I think is it CNBC? I don't know if I'm saying it correctly. Show. And it was like Secret Lives of the Super Rich
Hmm.
that I watched, and I found out about it on Hulu on a plane ride and have like immediately fall in love with it, but it's super old. Those types of things always inspire me. And when I watch like $1 million listings and like that type of financial freedom is definitely a model for me that I aspire to. Um, yeah, I can just think of things like that I see on TV, or I can like see people in our lives, for example, or like I really admire older generations, grandmothers, and who've just like they've phased out of caring about what other people think about
Yeah, they
them.
do.
That type of freedom I really really admire. So it's just like different places that I see, like, oh, they seem so really free in this area, and
Hmm.
that looks like something I would like to have too. What about you?
Um, I don't know if there's one particular person,
Mm,
but I think there's a little bit that I glean from different things that I see and different folks that I follow. Um, I really like some of the examples that Pastor Mike Todd gives of like
mm,
having like spiritual freedom.
yeah.
I think the real world examples that he gives of things during his sermons are things that I really resonate with.
Hmm.
I think that Charlemagne the God, who I
Yeah.
can very much acknowledge that he's frequently an asshole,
But
um,
we like him.
but I like him a lot
Yeah.
because he's just kind of giving himself permission to like grow and change and
He's just so honest and very
yeah,
authentic.
and
Yeah.
have new information and change his mind.
Hmm.
And I think that is something that I've brought out of kind of how he lives and how he shows up in the world. Like, yeah, I heard something different, so now I've changed my mind. And he's also not scared to go against the grain and
Hmm.
have his own thought. Like, you get to talking about politics or something like that, and he'll be like, maybe I understand. Like,
Hmm.
that makes sense. This thing doesn't make sense. Why do
Yeah.
we keep doing this to ourselves? knowing that these people have no plan to actually help us. They just want, our
Our
vote,
votes. Yeah.
that type of thing. So, um, all of those things I think just kind of help free me
Yeah.
and help me get to a place of wanting to do that on an ongoing basis. To have like emotional, mental, spiritual, and financial freedom, like on an ongoing basis.
Mhm.
I think it helps to kind of put it in perspective for me too, because I realize that it's something I have to do all the time. That like, yeah, I grew up with these thoughts. Yeah, I thought I had gotten to the best version of myself, but now I have some new information, and that's
Mhm.
worth taking a look at and
Mhm.
maybe incorporating in the way that I live my everyday life too.
Mhm. Have you done anything to incorporate some of the things that you've seen from these models?
Yeah, I've stopped trying to be so hard on myself with
That's
like,
hard to do.
because I use the information that I have sometimes as like the benchmark,
Mhm.
and I'll can be mean as hell to myself just based on like this one thing being the benchmark, like
Yes.
this one way,
Mhm.
this one way of eating or this one way of working out, and that's what I'm aspiring to get to. And if I don't work out this many times a week or eat
Mhm.
this many salads or
Mhm.
whatever it is, then I'm failing. And there'll be some new information coming out tomorrow and be like, okay, romaine lettuce will kill you. I mean, the whole time over here trying to eat 6 romaine lettuce salads per week, eating death and damnation. Like, so it is the freedom to do the best that you can do, and
And that'd be okay. That'd be
and that'd
enough.
be okay, and that'd be
Yeah,
enough.
that's coming. I'm thinking just different ways of saying the same thing, I suppose, but the freedom from self judgment, self criticism, self doubt,
Hmm.
um, not enoughness, buying into not enoughness, freedom from buying into not enoughness. That's the whole vibe.
I'm
Um,
so good at it though.
I mean, isn't everybody? Well, aren't a lot of people then? I'll say that. Um, yeah, I try to find things of, so when yeah, I don't know. I was just gonna think of like how ways I've tried to incorporate that into my freedom story. I just try to pick up nuggets of like looking into what they're doing. And you know what? Sometimes I try to I think a lot of this, what I've mentioned, is like changing your mindset and increasing your thinking, right? Like letting go of stinking thinking, and then also enlarging your mind to believe that those higher, if that's the right way to say it, are possible. Those
Hmm.
things are
Hmm.
that I see are possible. Sometimes I'll just pay the cost to be the boss just to
Hmm.
like experience the feeling of that
Hmm.
thing, and then just try to vibrate on that level. I know that sounds a little woo woo for some folks, but I believe in that, like where you vibe and your energy and how you attract people. Your where you're vibing, your energy like attracts the experiences of people and all that around you. And so I just try to be at that level of thinking and
Yeah,
being to attract that level of experience, I guess is what I'm trying to verbalize.
I think for me too. And initially, I was hesitant to call names and stuff when we entertained the question about like who modeled that for you. On the back end of that, I'm thinking that I have the freedom to like not have any one person be everything.
Oh yeah, I don't agree with
Yeah.
that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but it also releases me from that for myself. You know what I'm saying? Because people have the right to evolve and change
Mhm.
and grow
Mhm.
and err and correct, right? So why am I holding myself to this ridiculous standard that nobody can meet?
Yeah.
But even going back to Michael Todd, like we were just Michael Todd, Michael Todd, Michael Todd, and then the spit hit the fan, and he
Oh
spit in
my
his
gosh.
brother's eyes, and everybody was on his head
Spit in his hand and then
and
put
it
it out.
rubbed in his eyes
It
trying
was
to give this
gross.
example of how Jesus was, and people were like,
We
Michael
watched it
Todd
live and
is.
I was like,
And then there are so many people who are talking about like, oh, he's so patriarchal. He always paints women in this way, and da 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 da. And then Charlemagne the God will say some more crazy stuff, and people will not be fooling with him for a minute. And then it'll be like this person after this person after this person who we put on pedestals. I mean, human beings put on
Mm.
pedestals, and then their humanity shows up, and we be like, oh, well, I'm gonna cancel them. Um, and then I hold myself to that ridiculous standard too. Like, and we've talked about this, about starting a podcast about like, well, I ain't perfect, so I don't want to be out here for people to see me saying one thing and then my life show up and something else happen. They'd be like, you damn fraud,
But
you
that's
know.
not what we're trying to do here. We're not trying to teach anybody anything. We're just trying to process process wholeness, process healing. And so hopefully, we always pray that someone takes something from this
Yeah.
that will impact their lives in a positive way. But at the end of the day, like please don't put us on a pedestal because we are.
Yeah. No, but I don't
Yeah.
want to put anybody on a pedestal because
Yeah.
nobody, deserves it. I respect people who are brave enough to live their lives where people can see, everything that you do. And the
Mhm.
thing that I appreciate most are the people who are like living and
Just
being in the
honest.
game and just
Yeah.
being honest and saying that, I ain't got all of it figured out, but I have this particular area of expertise and I have a platform and I want to do something with my platform. So many of us sit on our talents and um, leave those restraints of not wanting to be seen on us because what if people see me and they don't like it? Or what if
Yeah.
people see me and then I go out here and I'm doing life wrong or I mess up and all those things. And I think that there is so much more that we could be doing for each other as a community
Mhm.
if we would free ourselves from like these ideas around like cancel culture and not being free to learn and grow and experience life and be able to correct in the moment or you know um, being able to just figure shit out. Sometimes having a
Yeah.
space to be nurtured in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this isn't about cancel culture. I have thoughts. I'll save them for later. Let's move on to the haze. What's the haze of obtaining freedom? Do you ever obtain it? Like, is it something to be achieved? It's a state of being.
I think just that it is a state of being. I think that as with most things that we talk about, it is a journey,
Mm-hmm.
and there will be times when you are rocking that shit out, and there will be times when you are not so great
Yeah.
at it. But I am giving myself and I'm giving you permission to be on the journey and be doing the best that you can do.
Mm-hmm. For me, the haze is like my negative self-talk. And so I
Yeah.
could be, trying new things. And it's the vulnerability too that's really difficult for me. I prefer to feel and uh, express myself really freely with my closest loved ones or by myself. And so, like, being more vulnerable openly requires courage on my part. Sharing more of my story requires courage on my part. But even through all of that and all the things that we've discussed, it's just negative self-talk is
Hmm.
like, I could be actually like, oh, I'm really proud of myself and I've done this thing for the first time and I'm doing this differently and I think this way differently. And then all of a sudden I'd be like, I
Um,
mean, you cool, but
you ain't doing that.
right. And so, yeah, the when I was talking about stuck places and just kind of overall, I guess, mental, emotional, spiritual freedom, it's just like the self talk, or it'll be like, you remember when you did this thing and it wasn't that smart, and the fallout from that. You remember this thing where you
Hmm.
hurt this person's feelings. You
Hmm.
remember that. You remember that time when
Hmm.
it's just like, why does that have to be a thing? So I wish those stuck places, when I was saying before, I wish I could be free from them. But for some reason, the inner critic just always comes back like, hey, I'm still here. don't forget I'm over here. I see you trying to be free and things, but also F
Got
your
some
freedom.
But I really want to be just in a good space in the relationship that I have with myself.
Yeah.
And that is hard for me. That is a haze for me. Um, because I am my own worst critic.
Yeah.
Um, and I think I mentioned something to you last night just about, do I want to be in relationship? Do I want to be right? Or do I want to appear righteous? And I really want to be in relationship. And I want to be in a healthy relationship. And that starts with me.
Mm.
I wish for all of us a love that starts with the love of self,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the relationship that I have with me is so important because I'm going to be the one to beat myself up about the things that I've done. And I don't want to be out here just being right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be out here just being righteous. I want the relationship that I have with the person I have to look at in the mirror to be one where I can look myself in the eye and say that I'm doing the best that I can, and also be able to look back at myself and say, that's enough
Mm-hmm.
for right now.
Mm-hmm.
And building relationship is so freeing, to not have this pressure to always get it right, and to have this freedom to, uh, not feel like I'm sitting in my righteous indignation,
Mm-hmm.
telling people how to live their lives and any of those things. I'm just out here talking and having conversation that I hope, promotes
Mm-hmm.
relationship between people, where we give ourselves the freedom to, you know, um, have conversation that maybe creates better understanding. And maybe I didn't disagree with you, but after this conversation, I feel better about the disagreement, right? And us still being on the same page as it relates to being in relationship. I want to have that same type of relationship with people that are around in my circle, and that, same type of free relationship with myself,
Mm-hmm.
to where I can get new information and just do something different. Because if sometimes if it's less left up to me, and the conversations that I have with myself, the stories that I tell myself about other people and their intentions, hell, I'd be here in the house and wouldn't fool with nobody. Just
Yeah.
letting go of that guilt and shame is something that's difficult.
That's a whole word, and I'm sure that's the case for everybody. Negative self talk, guilt, shame, not enoughness are
Hmm.
probably recurring themes for
Hmm.
everyone. You hear more and more people talk about anxiety these days as
Hmm.
well, like all of that. And I guess the question would be, what does it look like for us to be free from all of those things?
All right. So we talked about the haze. And so
Mm,
it's only right for us to talk about how to navigate the haze.
and show
That's
up.
not that's not an answer that you can give people. Just go Kanye shrug it up.
Just show up every day and try. I'll say that the way that I try to navigate through it is I try to find new information. So my therapist,
Hmm.
thank God for her, and the way that she helps me to make connections and try to be more gracious with myself and braver and just have more self-awareness. So therapy 1000% helps. I'm always reading books and documentaries. Like, so when I learn new things, I'm always trying to like put it in practice and be like, oh, this is
Hmm.
something I wasn't aware of, or this is a different way to think about that. I get that. I'm always searching for that when we listen to sermons, and I can literally soak up a new perspective about life from almost anywhere.
Yeah.
And then I try to take those new perspectives, that diversity of thought, and apply it to my life in a way that makes the most sense to me. Um, yeah. Prayer, meditation. When it comes to financial freedom, keep learning new things, trying new things, like making better choices, wiser
Hmm.
choices, right? So it's just a combination, I think, of things. I think it all starts with self-awareness. And so therapy, prayer,
Hmm.
exposure, or sitting with in sermons and church services, and like to be fed, that kind of spiritual food, are all ways that I kind of try to navigate through that and try to keep myself in a space of free, like a free space. But
Yeah.
again, I don't know if it's like a constant state that is sustained. What about you?
Um, Everything you said,
Everything.
but
Plus one.
I am learning to bet on me, to have
Mm,
the confidence to bet on myself,
yeah.
and to understand that, even if it feels like I lost, I won.
Mm.
Um, because there is a lesson that I'm gleaning from it that's going to propel me into a better version of myself.
Yeah.
And it may not feel like that in the moment, but when I bet on me, I understand that I have everything I need in me. Um, and if I'm going through it, then it is to make me stronger. And it's not that I'm struggling with any of it, like I'm being nudged into my greatness.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that I am, and I also give myself permission to feel the way that I feel in the moment, but to
Mm-hmm.
not to continue to be in that space.
Yeah.
So I don't want old stuck places giving me permission to create new stuck places.
Mm-hmm.
So just bet on Scott, Shawty. You ain't gonna lose.
I like that. Betting on ourselves is a way to kind of navigate through freedom. I like that. I'll
Yeah.
work with that.
It is bravery, it is courage, it is all those things that say you are enough. When my
Mm-hmm.
automatic thoughts may be telling me that I'm not. And my automatic thoughts, they're gonna be, what they are.
Mm-hmm.
But I battle against them when I bet on me anyway. And I say, okay, that did happen. That's your benchmark for that. But we doing it anyway.
I appreciate when you use your professional jargon here because I learn new words from you. Enhance my vocabulary. What you just? What you should? What was it today? I'm remembering from one of the other episodes. You said loose associations. Today it was what's the word you just used?
I don't know.
God, dog, I want to keep a glossary of terms. What is it?
What were you talking about? Automatic thoughts?
Automatic thoughts. There you go. Automatic thoughts.
I can't.
Stuck places, loose associations. All learned from Scott Hayes here.
Jesus.
Anyways, I like what you just said. And I want to talk about some lessons. I want to kind of bring us full circle back to where we started at the top of the convo with Nina Simone. And she, in the same clip, was saying, no fear. That's what freedom is to me. And then she goes on to say, you can be free and still be a prisoner. So she just kind of talks about, freedom. When she says that, it immediately, means to me mental, emotional, spiritual bondage, right? Physical bondage. And made me feel like I'm trying to get to like, what's the lesson? What's the most memorable lesson about freedom? And I'm trying to get to a place where I want to say that it's a choice. Some circumstances, I don't want to say across the board, but the type of freedom that we're talking about, it's a choice. You think about things like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, right? Because at a certain point, it's about your personal choice.
Yeah.
There's this other, we're going to talk about in a future episode about, that the slight change of plans. And this woman was talking about her going through cancer treatment. And she says this phrase, and she was like, I had to save my own life. And I would have to save my own life however many times she had to do it. And that really, really resonated with me because I think when we choose freedom in this way, we are actively saving our own lives, right? And so, I guess the most memorable lesson would be choice, in my opinion. I'm thinking about Insecure, right? And the whole series, you see Issa's, I don't even know what you call it, like the person in the mirror. I don't know, those were her automatic thoughts or what. But by the end of the series, that reflection is not talking to her anymore. And then she has that whole monologue with Lawrence when she's like, I have to choose it. I have to believe it myself. And then you don't see that version of herself in the mirror talking back to her with the negative self-talk anymore. And I really do think that that's the case. I think it's easier said than done on choosing it and sustaining that choice. But I really do think that's the point of it all. I think we just have to choose it. What are your thoughts on that?
They are many. So a couple different things, but I'll just start here and just see, sometimes I'll just be talking, y'all. Don't do that.
I ain't saying nothing.
You didn't have to. To the point about Issa and Insecure, I would say that time that what I drew from her time with that is the time that she was spending in the mirror, like going back and forth with her own self, was time that she could have been out doing the thing. And sometimes it's necessary to have those conversations with yourself. But for me, I think about the time that I have spent in my life, just like with these cuffs on, with these restraints on, being scared to do the thing because of the way that I've made bad choices in the past. The biggest thing for me outside of your own self-example is that I'm here for the entire journey. Like I want the ups and the downs and to be able to feel the thing that I celebrate the most about where I am in this season of my manhood is being able to experience every single one of my emotions. To free all men, but first to free this man of this idea that I'm not allowed to experience all of my emotions as a human being. But more than that, to be able to experience all of my emotions, but not to be controlled by any of them. To give myself the freedom to experience a thing and continue living life as a part of my journey. When they put me in the ground, I want people to be able to say that they had a great experience with every piece of me. Whether I was experiencing joy or sadness, or if there was a hard time going on in my life, that I was a man who was able to express myself and share with the world that it was okay to feel all your feels and that be a part of my journey. I don't want to be a person who withdrew when things were hard and gave this ideal that I had this perfect life or I was this perfect person. Because then when I try to live up to that ideal, I won't give myself permission to have all the things that come on the other side of taking a chance on myself. And I want all of it. And I won't always like the way that it feels. There will be hard times that come, but those times are a part of the story that I'm supposed to tell. The things that I'm supposed to share with my nephew and my nieces and, all those folks that are important to me in my life, my godchildren, that I want them to see that life is going to happen. And you can get about the business of living or you can get about the business of dying, So for me, that is what Get Free or Die Trying is about. Like, I want to be free to have joy, to have pain, to have sorrow, to have like unexplainable, indescribable happiness. And to know that I experienced that because I chose to put my feet to the ground and get out there and do the thing with the people that I love the most.
Yeah, it makes me think of, there's another saying, are you living or are you just existing? And that's basically that to me says, are you free? Like, because existing, you can just get up every day, go through the motions, do routine, you do things the same way because you've always done them that way and they work, I guess. But it doesn't require much for you. You're just going through the motions. You're staying in your stuck places because you've always been there. You're just existing. What's that book we had to read in high school? And I think about it from time to time because it's the only thing that sticks out to me. Is it Great Expectations or something?
Great Expectations.
An old girl like got jilted at the altar or something, and she like sat at the table in her wedding gown in the dining room for like years. Like she just existed in that stuck place. And so how many of us are doing that? And that's a really dramatic image of it. But I'm sure that there are areas of our lives where we like actually just parked and are just existing in that area. And so this idea of freedom, like how do we come alive again, even past those places?
And to me, it is like we do all of these things, all of this career stuff that we do, all of this advancement to build like in what my mind is like this great big savings, this yacht, this big thing that we intend only to leave parked on the shore, to never venture out. into the world. And what are we storing all that up for?
Mm.
What are we going to do with it? It's not able to come with us.
Yeah.
Sure, there is some degree of financial freedom that we want and generational wealth and all of those things. But if I spend all my time just storing it all up and just opt for the safety of the shore, then what have I really left? What is my real legacy?
Yeah.
That, I know how to be safe real well.
Safe. Yeah.
And that is surviving.
Does safe mean you are free?
Right. So we can survive. There's thrivership for us. There is abundance that I believe that I'm supposed to have on this side of the grave.
Yeah, and I think it'd only be wise for us to say, just like any other area of life, the impression that I'm getting now is like freedom isn't a monolith. And so I think that there are versions of freedom for everybody. So I was thinking, basically, there are people that I know who will, bungee jump and jump out of planes. And like, to them, that is like freedom. That is like newness. That is adventure. But that might not work for somebody else, and doesn't necessarily, that doesn't mean that other person isn't free. And so
it doesn't, because that's not the agreement Jesus and I have. It ain't.
So I would just encourage everyone to find their version of freedom. And I think everyone will know what that feels like based on your experiences and what you aspire to and what feels authentic and true for you. And I think that's okay.
And that's the best version of who we are. Like finding freedom for ourselves, not allowing someone else to define it. Not watching someone else be free on the internet. Finding your own version of freedom and doing that thing.
Yep.
And having that story and letting that be the best version of you, your true and authentic self that you share with the people that love you and the people that you love, and for other people to be able to see if they opt to, whatever it is, but just being free.
Amen. Amen to all of that. What does this feel like? What's the music for this here moment?
There is this song by Perry Jones called Free. And in the song, she talks about I'm human, I'm capable, and I'm taking care of me.
And I'm free. It's just such a beautiful affirmative song. Like, you could really put it in the rotation for your morning routine and just be like, yeah, me too. Like, I am free.
And it's filled with affirmations of just like enoughness, and I'm here as I am, and that is enough, and I'm gonna keep going because I'm free. Everything about that song just like puts me in a place of just like, you know what, you're good, black man. You're doing well. Yeah, you're doing well. Well, I appreciate that song. We adding that to the repertoire. It will be available on the Music for the Moment playlist on the Love Haze on Spotify.
Make sure you find that thing. Go ahead and follow it. And speaking of follows, if you are tuning in on YouTube, make sure you like this video and subscribe. Leave us a comment. Tell us about your freedom. What's your freedom journey like? We love to hear it. If you are tuning in though from one of your favorite streaming platforms, be that Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, everybody got podcasts, Anchor, make sure that you like and rate us as well. You can follow us on those platforms, but give us some feedback. Let folks know if you enjoy it. Share it with your peeps. We really appreciate that.
Y'all know y'all enjoy it. Just tell people.
Tell your folks. And with that, like we always say, life will always present us with the haze, but you, me, we all have everything that we need within us to navigate through it.
Yeah. And you're not alone. Well, join us next time and every time. We're going to navigate this thing together.
Absolutely.
Happy Juneteenth, y'all.
All right.
Peace.
Bye.